Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I give thanks to our living God for blessing us such a beautiful day. Today is a very important day in the history of our Santa Baptist Cathedral Brana Bazaar Youth Ministry. We are hosting the first ever Q&A section, and I believe at the end we will all have acquired more knowledge and ideas. Without any further delay, I would like to introduce our special guest, Mr. Likokba, Sr.DA Treasuries and Accounts Government of Nagaland. He is also an executive member of Indigenous Rights Advocacy Center, IRAC, at New Delhi, and last but not least, he is also our youth advisor who is very much active, intellectual, and the list goes on and on. So, shall we give a round of applause to our Sr.DA? Yeah. Gentlemen, I give thanks to our living God for blessing us such a beautiful day. Today is a very important day in the history of our Santa Baptist Cathedral Brana Bazaar Youth Ministry.
So to begin with, what is the one word that you would use to describe yourself?
Well, I haven't really thought about it, but I would say grateful.
Okay, grateful. Okay, the first question. The 2023 state election saw the historic election of Nagaland's first women MLS, Member Legislative of Assembly. So, what steps are needed to ensure better gender representation and active political participation across our Nagaland state?
If you look at the Naga history, socially, politically also, women have never been given a privilege, in the policy making. In fact, the earliest I remember of, women participating in the grassroots policy level was somewhere in the 1980s. I remember my aunt Trilongla, she passed away in 2013. When the concept of this VDP secretary was introduced in 1976, she took over as a VDP secretary in 1980.
Okay.
And those days, there was no concept, there was no notion of women empowerment. Nobody knew about what women empowerment was or what women reservation was. So, she is one of the very few who participated in the policy making at the grassroots level. Now you imagine 1980 and you fast forward it to 2022, 24, that's a huge lot of a gap, right? Almost 2-3 decades of gap in between, and suddenly, of course, we have had maybe the second elected women representative in Nagaland. But it is a very major breakthrough in the Naga society, where it is a patriarchal oriented society where women have massively broke the stereotype and come up to a policy making level. So I think she can be a role of inspiration for all of us. And not to reach that particular level, I think it starts with our upbringing also. If you are actively participating, let's say we are in a church discussion forum. So if you are openly participating in Sunday school, for example, or if you are actively participating in child or youth, this will give you a lot of empowerment. Eventually, it will take you to, if you have a dream of political ambition, maybe the road would be much easier, right? So what I want to say is, she is a big inspiration, and it all starts from all this, small gatherings like this, for women especially.
All right. The second, Nagaland has previously seen unique opposition-less government. including alliance between the ruling People's Democratic Alliance (PDA) with the opposition parties like the NPF. So, does lack of formal opposition hinder accountability or facilitate faster consensus on the Naga peace talk?
I think, the fundamental, uh, the core foundation of a democratic nation is also to have an opposition in the government, right? I think all the youths will agree to me. A democracy or a democratic nation is not completed without oppositions playing its role. And so definitely it is very questionable and things will compromise in many ways now that we don't have an opposition in the government. And I think it's been quite some time that Nagaland has not witnessed any formally oppositions in the government, as our Pasha has mentioned. And this is going to, create a lot of complacent opportunities for the people in the power. Because there is no check and balance, right? Whatever decisions they take, it is all given a heads up by the whole of the legislative assembly members, or whatever laws they come up with, there is no questioning done to them. And definitely in the ongoing Naga peace talk also, which has been going on for a very long time. In fact, our Naga peace talk is also one of the longest peace talk in the history of Asia also. We have entered the world record also, longest peace talk without any solution. And the government being a major stakeholder in this, which does not have an opposition again, is going to create a huge, lacunae where the solution is still a dream far away yet to achieve. Yes.
So, I just want to know your POV that, do you think we can achieve this Naga peace talk?
I think, see, whatever I am saying is from my own personal point of view. I'm not representing any government's perspective or organization perspective as mentioned in my profile. But as per my observation, and also being someone who is very interested in Naga history, I think if we are to come to a nice conclusion and a solution, people's movement is very important. You see, I mean, if I were to ask you guys here, what do you know about the crux of the Naga peace talk or the Naga issue? Maybe, I will not be that surprised if you are not aware of the crux issue, right? So it's not just here, but if you ask 10 people, maybe 7 people might not actually know what is the talk about. So there is no people's participation, there is no people's movement, and until and unless it is a collective movement and participations, I think, as I mentioned earlier also, it is a very long dream yet to be achieved. So few people in the name of Naga issue coming to the front, bargaining, discussing, meeting, it is good. But overall, a collective movement, like that of the Indian national movement, where the people came out of the street, it was not just the leaders or the freedom fighters. Every citizens of India, young and old, came out on the street, they fought, they gave their life, they pressured the government, and that is how India got freedom. That kind of replication, maybe not in violence manner, but a very constructive movement by the people is the need of the hour. Otherwise, I think it's still a dream far away again.
Okay. Okay, the third question we have, I have highlighted this last Sunday. According to Berna study, it's a Christian research that association. According to Berna study, found that 23% of young generation Christian have significant intellectual doubts about their faith. They feel that church teachings and programs are not relevant to their lives, and church have failed to address their needs. So, what do you have to say on this?
Perna studies 20% or 22? 22%.
23.
Oh, okay.
23%.
23%.
Yeah.
If you were to think nicely, our youths today live in a very critical time. It is a global village we live in, right?
Yeah.
And although you are somewhere in a far-flung corner, not being able to meet people or not even in an urban area, yet you know what is happening at the end of the world. No? You are connected technologically so massively that the world is in your pocket. And if you look at it further again, the current youths, our screen time in the phone is very high.
Yeah.
And I think, if I'm not wrong, as per the Global Web Index 2024 or 25, the youth at an average spends around 17 hours in a week in their phones. Surfing, internet, catching up with friends, getting to know what is happening around the world. So 17 hours in a week would be like 2.5 to 3 hours at an average. You're spending that amount of time in your phones. And the internet is such that, you are accessible to everything. You want to know something, the Google is there for you. You want to know something, the ChatGPT is there for you. And this kind of informations are unfiltered again, So you can just sit and you can get a lot of knowledge, worldly knowledge, technological knowledge, which somewhere down the line, I believe, it questions our own faith. Like if you are reading a news about, say, Elon Musk trying to send someone to Mars or to another planet, then you would definitely question, if mankind can go like that, then maybe we were also created by our own selves. No? Yeah. Certain critical questions arises if we engage too much and if we take too much of world's knowledge and informations in an unbalanced manner. That is why, you see, coming to your question as to why youths fail to, or they are not properly fed. The youths feel that, even if they come to church, they are not properly fed, or the kind of intellectual inputs they want, they do not get it. The reason why they feel like that is because they have too much of knowledge and information from the outside world that somewhere down the line they feel little superior, and also somewhere down the line, in the meantime, they go far away from the Word of God, right? That is why I think, of course, you need to catch up with the world, you need to know what is happening, but meantime, we also need to understand that there are certain traditional approach of living a sane life. And from Christian perspective, you need to understand the Word of God. If that is the base, rock foundation of your life, no matter how fast the world is moving, you will still carry the value, the blessings, and the strong faith and go ahead with life, right? When we discuss about this, I'm always reminded of one Bible verse. And this is a Bible verse that has always been in my head for a very long time. It is from Joshua 1, chapter 1, verse 8. Let this word of God not depart from your mouth. Understand this carefully and read carefully. I might break it up a little bit, so that you will be prosperous and you will have a successful life.
Okay. The next question is just for fun. It's from our youth. Someone told me to carry this question to you. So, are you a picky eater? Are you a picky eater?
Well, I'm not a foodie, and I do not explore much of, different cuisines, but I like to eat whatever is available, yeah.
Many times we hear our elders saying, today's youths are the leaders of tomorrow. But at the same time, youths are left neglected in many ways. So, why the church should support youths, or why youth ministry is important?
You see, youths are not just important from the church ministry perspective. Youths are important in every aspect of life, be it in socio, political, religious sectors. Youths are important everywhere. And India is a young nation. Majority of the Indians are youth, unlike Japan and China, where majority of the population is old age, right? So basically, we are going to be the main stakeholder few years down the line. And when it comes to church, like our pastor has raised, I think churches should not hesitate to come and support openly to the youth. I think the church should spend their money, the church should spend their resources, the church should invest, spiritually, materially, resourceful-wise, financial-wise, and encourage the youths. That's the only way, we will be inspired and we will be motivated.
So, based on that, how do you reflect on our church? Because you are also an advisor. At the same time, you are being involving actively. So far, according to your observation, what do you have to say on that?
You see, I think I did a very rough calculation of this Purana Bazar household and very roughly as to how many youths we might have. And as per my very unscientific calculations and estimates, we will be having not less than 150 youths.
Okay.
And the average attendance of youth in our fellowship is somewhere around 15 to 20, which is actually very less. The reason, as per my assumption, the reason as to why there is a less attendance of youth is, I think the youths in our area, okay, let's just confine to Purna Bazar, a lot of them feel that, they are, out of the category of, this fellowship. Maybe they think they're too old, or think, maybe they do not have friends, or think that, it would be a little awkward to just come and sit, no? So, this might be some of the major reasons, and obviously Sunday is a Sabbath day for us. It's a day we worship God and acknowledge God, right? So, how do youth compromise with that? My speculation is, let me not go to youth service, but let me get a peace of mind and let me compromise and, make me feel myself comfortable by going to the devotion. So, attending devotion becomes a bargain, point for the youths, and the reason, very, nice reason for them not to attend the devotion. All right. So, if you look at the devotional service, I also look around, I see a lot of youth seated. But the same youth is not visible in the youth service. So, we bargain fellowship for devotion. And I think it is not a very encouraging thing. Yeah.
Okay. Not everyone is born with a silver spoon. The World Bank estimated in 2023 that 24% of the Indian population is poor. So, do you think people live in poverty because of their own decision or because of uncontrollable circumstances that happens to them, or both?
See, this is a bit of a economic-oriented question. And, before I indulge into this, there is a very famous saying or a quote, maybe, wherein Bill Gates' father, who was called Bill Gates Sr., he told his son that if you are born poor, it's all right. But if you die poor, it's your mistake, right? Now, to address this particular question as to poverty and how people have accepted and how there is a massive poverty, the there are so many perspectives to this. One is, as mentioned by the pastor, not all of us are fortunate enough to be born with a silver spoon in our mouth, no? Or not everyone is privileged where you come down and everything is set up for you. And especially in our Naga society, we are the first and the second generation who are receiving education. So in most cases, that's not, right? So the problem here is, it is not about just being poor, but also being born in a place where the surrounding is poor. In the case of Nagaland, take the example of Nagaland. Nagaland is a very poor state. The government and the state is unable to have a high capital formation, unable to bring in means of production and unable to take care of you. She is unable to give you employment, she is unable to take care of you. So in that sense also, sometimes the environment also plays a role, right? But whatever the situation it is, if you have the will and the desire and the determination, I think no force on earth can stop you from breaking the stereotype and living a self-sufficient life. In fact, if God's willing and if God's favor is on you, you will go on to become, a very massive contributor, not just in the social, political, religious, but also in the economic realm, right? So I think at the end of the day, it is our heart and our will and our determination, our perseverance, that will take us very long way, yeah.
Okay, so the next question we have is, do you think Christians are easily recognizable to others? Why or why not? Should they be?
I think anywhere in the world, we are known for our, reflection of Christ in us, in the sense, we are kind, we are gentle, we are lovable. And so definitely, our actions would testify our faith also. So definitely, yes, we are very much recognizable by, not just by our words, but also by our actions. And in today's world, more than the preaching and the sermon, it is your actions that people look for it, and people likes to learn from it, right? So definitely, yes.
Okay. India is a democratic country, and we practice secularism under the fundamental rights in Articles 25 to 28. Every citizen is guaranteed right to freedom religion, and Articles 14 to 18 guarantee right to equality. So, what would you like to say about the recent declared banning of religious poster or slogans on church vehicle under the Central Motor Vehicles Act?
Well, it's a very recent news, and I think we all have been reading about this, flashing out in our phones and newspapers lately. And this whole reason behind the enactment of this Motor Vehicle Act of 1988, right? The whole reason behind this enactment was to check on, licensing, road safety, registrations, insurances of the cars and the vehicles. So basically, the act that was enacted, implemented in India, was mainly to check on all that. Transport, is it a commercial transport, or is it a public transport, or is it a private transport? Road safety, like I said, if you are wearing a helmet or not, or if it is emitting a lot of carbon monoxide or dioxide or not, no pollution. Yeah. So it was primarily based on that the act was enacted. In fact, the act was amended again. It was modified in 2019 also. And when the Motor Vehicle Act was amended in 2019, the reason was same only. It was just enhance the road safety. In fact, in 2019, accidental insurance were also further, leveled up. So the whole concept of banning religious stickers, markings, or slogans, of course, it is there in a very small provision. And that provision falls under clause 96.2 and clause section 111.2. But it is a very small, trivial provision which lies in the hands of the state government again. And the power is, if you want to check on stickers, logos, and all that, okay? So it's a very small provisions. And, you know, if you look at the whole of India, since it's a little interesting topic, I'm diving it a little deep. If you look at the whole of India, 1, 2, 3 states have actually come up with this kind of notifications where caste-based or religious-based slogans and markings have been banned. Like, for example, you know, in 2022 or 21, this notification was out in Haryana also. Okay. And it was out in Punjab also, Uttar Pradesh also, where caste-based markings and logos and religious-based were banned. But the reason behind why this was banned by the state was because if you look at Haryana, you know, Uttar Pradesh, these are states where there is a heavily concentrated caste-based people, right? India, by and large, is a very caste-oriented nation. And so it was affecting law and order problem. Like, for example, between the Hindus and the Muslims, you know, between certain castes, if you are putting up a very big, slogan, it would create animosity between these people. And it was creating a law and order problem. But in the case of Nagaland, if you look at it, you know, Nagaland is a Christian state. 90% of the population in Nagaland is Christian. And it is a Baptist-dominated state. It is the largest Baptist state in the world. If you can name me any instances where, because the car had a Bible verse, people fought or people killed each other. If you can name any instances, I'm sure you will not have any stories like this, no? Just because a pastor was driving a car, written, you know, Sangam Baptist Church pastor, people came and attacked him on religious reasons. That has never happened.
Yeah.
This kind of things have never happened in Nagaland, where it was a, difficult situation where it would bring in law and order problem. So that has never happened. So the whole point behind, the government of Nagaland, the state transport department, bringing out notifications saying not to put up slogans and markings, in the church perspective I'm saying, I think it is very irrelevant and little unnecessary also. And one thing that amuses me is, it lies in the hands of the state government to come up with such laws. The central government has given the power to the state government to come up with those provisions. And so I still wonder why the state government had to go to that extent, and touching and hurting the sentiments of the people here. Yeah.
Some people advocate that in social media platform or even in the gatherings in church, something like that. Some advocate that it's because of this political party like PJB, because it's mainly focused on like Hindus. So some advocate that it's because of PJB alliance that we have here, Nagaland government. Because of that, this PJB is trying to ban this vehicle, stickers, slogans,
Yes.
etc. So do you think it's because of this?
Every notification, given by the government or any orders passed by the government, they will always have a political intention, right? India being run by political leaders, so to say, the government formed by them. So you cannot say that they do not have hands. You cannot deny that, yes.
Okay.
In fact, like I said, just to extend this, like I said, in other states, the law and order problem arises when people put stickers based on caste, based on religion. But in Nagaland, in fact, a vehicle carrying, the name of the church, or a buses carrying the name of a church, in fact, promotes peace and harmony. I have a very good example also. This beginning of the year, you were also there. We went for a church recreation program, right? Yes. Somewhere in the Taroka, that was towards the Marise village. We went
Vijayapur,
for a
Vijayapur.
picnic cum recreational activity with the church, and it's a picnic spot. You know, it is open for everyone. So we went with this pastor's car. You know, we had a pass which was very big, written Sangam Baptist Church pass like that. And when we reached the spot, there were also one group who were already there.
Yeah.
And they were also picnicking, right? Merrymaking.
Yeah.
And some of them were indulging in alcohol also. Of course, none of our problem.
Yes.
But the moment they saw us coming, they recognized us through those vehicles only, through those big churches, buses. And they maintained their decorum after seeing those logos and, church stickers. So in fact, having those stickers and logos and churches affiliations, in fact, further promotes peace and harmony in Nagaland. There is no way it will create law and order problem in a state like Nagaland.
Okay. We all know there are pros and cons for every egg. The same goes with social media, but in today's generation, how can a Christian navigate social media without losing the Christian values?
See, I think this question, related question I've already addressed, but like I said, the world is a global village right now, and there is so much of information at your disposal. And in a way, somewhere down the line, this is going to affect you negatively also. And what is Christian values? The core tenets of a Christian values are love, peace, kindness, forgiveness, right? And these are very basic tenets of Christian values which you will get to learn in real world and not in real world. So our youths should understand and make it clear distinctions and use the social media judiciously and wisely, and also give more time to the real world where you will get to learn Christian values and you will get to see and you will get to feel, which will have a far-reaching, positive impact in our life.
Okay, the last question. If you could change one thing about our youths, especially in this Sangam Baptist Church Banana Bazaar, what would it be?
Well, I think there is always room for improvement and
Yeah,
changes.
yeah.
But people who are here, I think I do not have to say too much. They are responsible, they're God-loving, they understand the value of fellowship, and that's the reason why they're here.
Yeah.
But of course, if you look at the life, being humble, God-fearing, will take you a long way in life. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I give time to the floor. If you have any question, you can please take your time.
My question to you, sir, is like about the church ministry. Now, as we came to know, centralizing the churches, so I just want to ask you, that disadvantage and the advantages of being in the centralized church. So if you could please answer this question.
I think I might not give you the best answer to this, as I'm not from a full-time church ministry worker. So I do not really have a very clear idea on the administrative structure of the church. But on a very layman's perspective, centralization of a church might bring in uniformity in running the whole ministry or the port. Otherwise, sometimes if there is no centralization, it will create a lot of spaces of misunderstanding, miscommunication, and misadministrations. So maybe the one reason as to why church decided to centralize the whole administrative structure maybe was that. But again, if you look at it from a different perspective, centralization has also, in a way kind of tied our hands and legs. As now that there is only one structure, it becomes difficult for us to preach. Like for example, take the case of our youth ministry. Not our youth ministry, but in general, youth ministry. You see, when there is a centralization, say let's talk about funding, okay? It becomes very difficult for us to have a separate funding, and money being one of the core factor in order to run a ministry also. This is somewhere where we find it difficult to preach. So these are some few pros and cons, but like I said, since I'm not from a full-time worker, I might not give you the best answer that you are searching for. Yeah. But generally again, from a secular perspective, decentralization works more effective and more efficient than centralization.
Good evening, sir. So, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a law in Indian Constitution that non-locals can purchase land in Nagaland. So, that is also a very big reason why some major companies are hesitant to set up big industries in our land. So, which affects our development, and it can also lead us to a loss of employment opportunities. And it is a very thoughtful law, because in some other regions of the world, if I'm not wrong, in America, Native Americans have lost all their land because there was no law protecting their land. So they lost all their land, and now they have no place to call home. So this is a law that saves us Nagas from losing all our land, but at the same time, it is also affecting our development, and we are losing a lot of employment opportunities. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's a question that you have asked. You see, as you have mentioned, the Native Americans lost their land because there was no law to protect those lands. So it was all purchased and bought by big industries and corporates, and that is how eventually they lost their identity. In the case of Nagaland, we are a small tribal people, constitutionally protected by Article 371A, wherein the land, the resources, our religious identity and our culture is safeguarded. And that's the reason why a non-indigenous cannot purchase land in Nagaland. And in the context of Nagas, the land is our first identity, right? But as you have mentioned, that has also created a loophole wherein people are unable to come and set up businesses, right? You see, of course, that might be one reason why corporates are not willing to come, because they are unable to own the land. But that can be a very small, trivial reasons, okay? The larger reasons as to why Nagaland, despite of having statehood for the last 50, 60 years, unable to bring in corporate, is because we do have so many other factors which is actually hindering the coming of corporates. Like we have law and order problems. We also have, maybe I might not be politically correct, but let me put it as insurgency problems, right? We also have, taxation problems, right? And these are some surface level problems which are discouraging corporates to come. I know certain big brands that have come to Dimapur and they left because they were unable to bear the taxes burden by our own people, right? So it has discouraged them. And another reason is also, the government of Nagaland does not have enough means to bring them in, because we do not have any savings. The government of Nagaland does not have any savings. You see, if you are going to invite, let's say, Rihanna to your birthday, you want Rihanna to sing and dance on your birthday. Rihanna will only come if you have good hotels. She will only come if you arrange a private jet for her, right? And definitely she will come only if you offer her big money, right? It's the same way. You want to bring in corporates, big corporates, you know, global conglomerates do Nagaland. You need to have infrastructures. You need to have certain structures, right? Otherwise, they will never come. You see, we don't have good roads. Our drainage is clogged in half an hour of rain. You know, there is law and order problem, as I mentioned. So these are major factors which is discouraging corporates from coming into Nagaland, more than the unavailability or not being able to purchase land.
Why is mental health becoming an important topic among youth?
The whole issue of mental health prevailed a long time back also. And if you look at our own history, you know, there were issues of mental health. Just that they were not properly aware of what mental health was all about. No? But the intensity of the mental health, the need of these mental health institutions and addresses gained more attention over the years. Because our people, say young people, are involved in so many activities, you know, which might not be so wanted activities, that at the end of the day, you know, your mind and your heart is filled with restlessness, you know, anxiety, you know, you are unable to have a good sleep, you know, you're having a problem at home, social problem, you have economical problems, you have personal problems. You know, this is people as early as 9 years, 11, 12 years are into relationships. You know, things have changed. So all this have snowballed heavily on the mental health of our people. And that is why, you know, mental health institutions and addressing the mental health is very important. I don't know if I have made your answers as per your wish, but yeah.
I just have a simple question. Like in Nagaland, there are a lot of insurgencies. They are fighting for the independence of the Nagaland. Do you think the condition of our Nagaland deserves to be an independent country? And if the country becomes independent, what do you think will be the condition of our Nagaland?
These are like very big questions which will have a definite answer. But of course, you see, if you look at the Naga history, we were free, all right? If you look at the whole history of the Nagas, we were free. The place where we stayed was our land. The water where we drank from was our rivers and our waters, right? It was only in the later part of the stage in the history we came under the British administration. And the Britishers also administered us, not because they wanted to come and, you know, rule over us, but they were also looking for, you know, a shorter route to connect Manipur and Assam. And Nagaland fall in the middle of it. And so they were looking for a road connectivity only, but eventually they found the Nagas, you know, creating a lot of law and order problem to them, causing their economics. So that's the reason why the Britishers took control of us. And fast forward, after 1947 when India got independent, the Britishers left all the administration that they were controlling into the hands of the government of India. And by default, the Nagas, which were under the British administration, by default fall under the government of India hands. And that's when the whole, you know, fight for a Naga independence started. Because by then, you know, some few Nagas were highly educated and they realized that it was wrong. You know? Without our knowledge and without our consent, we became a part of another union territory of India, right? And that's how the whole fight started. But I think, you know, getting independent, fighting for it is a very big, you know, objective, which will take some time. And obviously, you know, even if you get independent, the worry of how to run the country or how to take care of or will we survive, definitely that will be there, but I'm sure we will find ways and means to survive. You know, there are so many instances where small nations have come out cut themselves off from the bigger nations, and they have survived wonderfully and beautifully. So definitely, given the opportunity, Nagas are known for their hard work, consistency, perseverance. So definitely we will survive. That's what I believe.
What are your thoughts on NLDB Act? Should it be revoked? Or like, is it okay to be like, as a church or an association to involve in NLDB Act? Because the church ministry or the so-called the NBCC, they are like against this NLDB Act. Not against, but like, you know what I'm trying to
Yes,
ask?
yes, yes. I got it.
So what
This Nagaland Liquor Total Prohibition Act that you just mentioned, it was under the duress pressure of the NPCC then in the 1980s, when they realized that the Nagas youth were being drowned into alcohol and drugs, okay, in the 1970s and 80s. That's when NPCC realized that something had to be done. And that's when they pressured the state government to implement this act, making Nagaland a dry state, wherein sale of any alcohol would be punishable offense, right? Now, over the course of years, 1989 till today, it's almost 37 years. Over the course of years, things have changed. Nagaland, if I'm not wrong, is not in as worse situation as it used to be before, all right? So, if you look at it from one perspective, lifting might economically benefit Nagaland. Why? Because, the taxes collected from the liquors goes into the hands of the state. All these excise goes into the hands of the state. So, state will earn revenue. But again, if you look at it from a different perspective, which I would like to take that perspective, is, we are a Christian state. And this was a strong movement led by the church, all right? And, one way to tell the world that we truly believe, not just by word, but also by the actions, is that upholding to this, NLDP Act. People say that, you are losing a lot of revenue. But you see, in Nagaland, there are so many ways and means you can earn revenues. We have so much fine landscape. There is something called responsible traditional cultural tourism. We can promote that. In fact, your field can be a place for a foreigner to come and make it into a homestay. Just this week I was accompanying officials from National Commission of Scheduled Tribe, and they were going around Nagaland seeing the chum cultivation. We slept in the farm only. I just came yesterday from Twinsang. We slept in the field with those VIPs. And we were also talking about this. There are so many ways and means where Nagaland can generate revenue. So liquor should not be the reason, or revenue generation should not be the reason behind lifting of this act. In fact, we should look at other perspective where, if you have to talk about the revenue generation, we can focus on those things, right?
Last question. We say that Nagaland is a dry state in regard to NLDB Act.
Yes.
But we see small shops, nook and corner in Dimapur area. So what do you have to say on that?
I think it is totally a failure from the state mechanism only. If there is liquor and if there is alcohol all around the state, despite of it being officially banned, then definitely the first agenda or the first agency that you would question is the state. So definitely it is a failure of the state mechanism only. Maybe a stringent, more measurements to check the flow would definitely, eradicate this. But at the moment, looking at the situation, I think the state has miserably failed to actually implement this act in words and in spirit and in actions.
If that is the aim, if there is no one, then I would request our Sr.DA to give a suggestion or anything to our youths, because this is the aim. So, if you have anything to say to our youths or to the viewers.
Well, one thing I have learned throughout my life is participation is not necessarily you standing, speaking, but just sitting, observing, learning is also a participation. And if you continue to participate like this, you speak, you raise, or you just listen, at the end of the day, maybe after a few years, you will realize how much it has shaped your personality and how much it has molded you, right? See, like today we're just a handful of us, but the conversation we have had, those who have missed this have missed already, right? So at the end of the day, I would encourage our youths to participate, be it actively or non-actively, not just in the church ministry, but also wherever you are, in the colleges, in your departments, or in the church level, or in your colonies, in your villages. You participate actively, and that is going to make you a good leader down the line, with all the leadership qualities and the traits that is required for you to be a leader. All right?
Ya kudiba Q&A kadu lili sa yo youth ministry la ko chakang na advisor sabo kang kadang actively kadang participate sana active to matai sala kutsi se involve sana kadang sa youth kang kadu support sana cheng da shiro shiro kadang kanyang ko shomlang Q&A la iba sa aku diba kadu le first ever Q&A ya sa yo nitro la youth ministry host sarbai ko hila isa current affairs mahal issues at isa buzoy da hipai cha sir lego la na khatu starting point khatu roi isa je la na jing chake khatu sanong in long dire ko sir da sing zoi pe cha chen na yo busy kadang time schedule tight khatu chang sala na yo muchinguyang zoi joria ra chi sala na chingi la so kadang physical tired khatu chang sala na pe cha shulam na yo wisdom knowledge sorry record about the pour out san is a youth ki khang sorry thala shulam kadang kanyang ko we believe that even in the coming days at this sorry is your issues ki makala sorry ba Q&A ba kuna is a youth ki khang interaction chaba kwar khas are your needs ti so reach out sanong ba sorry in a long dire ko in the kadang sorry da in a ayali lamro ba sa 2026 ngi tikira ba Q&A it's khapai it's kadang effective khadu san not only to our youths but beyond our youths as a reach out through social media platform ase ko certainly going yo choro isa youth isa azure ko ti ba yo cha cha charo na take this as an opportunity or take this platform as a privilege as a yo azure wisdom maha azure certain issues or race and azure clarification chapa hatskyo ba isa azure nolam chakangla isa mi azure amwano chano kono yo family azure chang ba kunna sarain khat mi same azba yo acha acha apisa face hano call so that nana the question khat raise ba kunna yakhat mi azure solution zamura ba ko in the coming days I humbly request all our youths to actively take part in this kind of Q&A. Kadang kanyang racer, azure tsarang bana na yo akangla, kono yo azure muchi ngoyang lapcho la azure tsarang bana mawachang bakang sa youth ministry yo tangkita na azure da kyang azure choke jare. Kadang kanyang ko youth ki katu shomlang roko, yo choroi hipaitsa aku tiba Q&A lile, but this is the beginning, I would say. Now we will invite in the coming days, Sir Chang Ha, this NPC Craig Charity, Mahal Entrepreneur D, Lang pa matures an interview sana, at Q&A kyon, ariyo struggles tikat chiro yatala isa learn sana, isa sa motivate sana, encourage sama kat sana bakang lang, ipa da isa di changdare, tsirang manisa mawachang.